Thank you very much. I'd like to call the Lakewood City Council meeting of Monday, April 6, 2026 to order. Ms. Schumacher, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Brandstetter.
Here.
Councilmember Lauricella.
Here.
Councilmember Lindholm.
Here.
Councilmember Pearson.
Here.
Councilmember Talbot.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Bell.
Here.
And Mayor Boki.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. I do the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for being here. The first item that we've got on is a proclamation recognizing April 25th, 2026 as Parks Appreciation Day. I'd like Mr. Jason Gerwin, for the chair of our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. I'll present the proclamation and then we'll take a photo.
Hi, Mayor. How are you?
Whereas parks, trails, and open spaces are essential to the health and well-being and quality of life for residents, providing opportunities for recreation, relaxation, connection with nature. And whereas our community's parks contribute to environmental sustainability by protecting natural habitats, improving air and water quality, and offering green spaces to help mitigate the effects of climate change. And whereas parks and recreation programs promote physical activity, mental wellness, and social connection, serving residents of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds. And whereas the stewardship of our parks depends on the dedication of volunteers, community groups, and park staff who work tirelessly to maintain and improve these treasured public spaces. And whereas Parks Appreciation Day is an opportunity for residents to come together in service beautifying our parks through activities such as planting trees, removing invasive species, cleaning up litter, and enhancing public amenities. And whereas this annual event strengthens community pride, fosters environmental responsibility, and ensures that our parks remain vibrant and welcoming for generations to come. And whereas on September 28th, Saturday, April 25th, 2026, from 9 a.m. to noon, volunteers of all ages will work at park sites around Lakewood, committing their time to clean up and beautify the Lakewood Community Garden, Edgewater Park, Fort Steilacoom Park, Harry Todd Park, Kiwanis Park, and Wards Lake Park. And whereas on Saturday, April 25th, 2026 at 12 p.m., a grand opening ceremony will take place at Wards Lake Park to highlight the enhancements to the park and open space and celebrate partners who help develop and will continue to take care of the park. Now, therefore, the Lakewood City Council do hereby proclaim April 25th, 2026 as Parks Appreciation Day in the city of Lakewood and urges all residents to show support by volunteering at one of our park sites and to help beautify and protect our parks. Proclaim this day, the 6th of April, 2026. Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you. Please have a few words and we'll take a picture.
I'd just like to thank City Council for this proclamation. You know me, my 16th, 17th time accepting this proclamation. And this isn't just about the parks, it's about the community. It's bringing the community together and them giving back in a little piece to the parks that we so love and enjoy. A day like today is easy to see why you want to be out there and doing it, but it doesn't matter if it's rain or shine. Hundreds of volunteers come out to this event annually. So number one, I want to thank Director Miles, staff. This is extra duties that's assigned. This takes a heck of a lot of work and coordination just to put this event on. So staff and Director Miles, and as always, City Council, your support, the Parks Department is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So next up is proclamation recognizing April 13th, 2026 to April 17th, 2026 as Black Wellness Week. I believe Christina Blocker is here. I don't know if Keith made it or not tonight, but if you could come down and Deputy Mayor Bell will read the proclamation.
Nice to see you. I'm gonna go ahead and read this, and you want to say a few words after that. Thank you, Christina, for being here today. So I will read, whereas in 1915, Booker T. Washington launched National Health Improvement Week, later known as National Negro Health Week, to spotlight and address health disparities in the Black community, including poverty, lack of access to formal health care, poor nutrition, poor sanitation, and lack of access to housing. And whereas a goal of this Health Week was to foster advocacy and education to remove barriers so that Black and African American people could achieve prosperity and success and have access to education, healthcare, housing, and build family wealth. And whereas holistic well-being encompassing physical, mental, emotional, and social health is a priority for all communities. And today, more than 100 years after the creation of National Health Improvement Week, health disparities still exist, especially within the Black communities in Washington State. And whereas we work to eliminate, in Washington State, and whereas work to eliminate these disparity calls for initiatives that are both inclusive and community-driven, focusing on leveraging existing resources and capacities. And whereas the Elevate Black Wellness Initiative aims to address health disparities facing Black communities through partnerships at all levels, including grassroots advocacy, local government, and by working with the Washington State Department of Health to raise awareness and establish actionable steps to enhance health outcomes and build a sustainable model for future wellness initiatives. And whereas government policies have enduring effects on the communities where they're implemented, and in 2021, the Lakewood City Council signed an equity statement committing the City Council to instill equity as a priority when developing policies and delivering city services, and when enacting initiatives to support and celebrate the diversity of the community. Now, therefore, the Lakewood City Council do hereby proclaim April 13th to 17th, 2026 as Black Wellness Week in the city of Lakewood. And it urges community groups, nonprofits, and other local governments to look at ways we can further improve health outcomes for Black communities by eliminating barriers and prioritizing access to services and programs for the betterment of the community. Proclaimed this 6th day of April 2026, Lakewood City Council. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lakewood City Council, for your leadership and for this third proclamation. That is such a beautiful thing to acknowledge. Lakewood was one of the first cities to say yes to a proclamation of this kind. And that early commitment really helped to build a statewide coalition that we now have today. As was shared, Lakewood's 2021 equity statement really committed to instilling equity as a priority in policies and services. And Black Wellness Week is a commitment in action. We all want the same thing. We want a community where every resident can thrive. And targeted universalism says that we get there by being specific about who faces barriers and intentional about removing them. So when we invest in eliminating health barriers for Black communities, the systems we improve, the access to care, the mental health resources and services, and the preventative resources serve everyone better. And it creates a rising, you all might have heard, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? It has that same impact for the entire community. So with that, I want to thank you all for not only participating and signing this document, but for continuing to show up in solidarity year after year. We appreciate you. We value your leadership and your service for what you all do every single day. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you all as community members for being part of the civic process. And thank you again. It's an honor.
Just stand in the middle of that.
Thank you very much. Next up is the Youth Council report. And we have Damian Cruz Guzman and Alexander Charles. So please come up and introduce yourself and tell us what great things the Youth Council is doing.
Good evening, Mayor Boki, Deputy Mayor Bell, and Council. My name is Damian Cruz Guzman. I'm a sophomore at Clover Park High School. During today's meeting, we received two presentations, one about sustainability and climate environment. We got invited to participate in making a mixed media project for the event. And we're also urged to become part of Regional Climate Council. We also received, the second presentation was from Eunice Elongo from Smart Programs. Following the presentation, members spent the rest of the meeting attending to final details of the April Youth Summit, which is coming up on April 18th. I think that's it for me. I'll turn it over to Alexander.
Good evening, Council. My name is Alexander Charles, and I'm a junior at Harrison Prep. For the remainder of our year together, the Youth Council will focus on hosting another annual Youth Summit on April 18th at Pierce College Lakewood campus. To date, we have 144 students registered, and with 2 weeks left, we're anticipating more students to register. We will recap the Youth Summit to discuss pros and cons and use this info when planning future events. We will begin planning our end-of-year event. So far, we have decided to have a potluck and we'll be giving out rewards for students who brought the most students to the Youth Summit. That's our presentation, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Pearson has a question for you.
Not really a question. Thank you. I had a lot of fun at the last year's summit, and we have a scheduling conflict this year, and so unfortunately we won't be able to attend, but I'm hoping that we don't make that an issue in future years, because it really is a good event, and I had a lot of fun interacting with all of the youth at the different tables and doing things. So I hope it's a successful event. It sounds like you guys have a ton of people showing up,
Yes.
are signed up. So I hope that it goes swell and wish you guys all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Brandstetter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I appreciate the update, the number of registered students. How does that compare with past summits?
I'm not sure the exact number, but it's substantially increased from the past years. I know like the area that we are in right now compared to past years, we've had a major increase in students participating or signing up to participate in the event.
I know that at one time in past years, there was hopes to begin to attract more students from outside the Clover Park School District and make this a more regional event. Have you made any progress in that regard?
I don't believe we did or we have yet.
Okay, well, there are future years. And thank you to you on behalf of thanks to all of the planning efforts that have gone on, because I know that they have been substantial on the part of many of the youth council to be able to go and do that. And I certainly hope you get the event you deserve.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Good job. Good luck at the event. I mean, that event's been going on for a number of years now, and I can remember when they first started it. And it's really been a youth-led event, which we're very proud of. I think you guys are doing a great job. You really are, and it's a good. We have a big. Just managing that, I guess, and getting through that and able to work with a group of, I think, 64 this year or something like that. It's a lot of members of the Youth Council this year that we're very proud of that, but it does take on some different dynamics than when it used to be like 24 or something, right? So good
Thank you.
job on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is public comments. Public comments are accepted by mail, email, or live, virtual, or in-person comments. Send comments in advance by mail or email to Brianna Schumacher, City Clerk at 6000 Main Street, Southwest, Lakewood, Washington 98499, or bschumacher@cityoflakewood.us. Comments received up to 1 hour before the meeting have been provided to the City Council electronically. Ms. Schumacher, I believe we have received at least one comment.
Mayor, you received written comments in advance of the meeting from Michelle Lee.
Thank you very much, and those are in the members' inboxes. Members of the audience may comment on items relating to any matter related to city business under the public comments period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. If you'd like to provide live virtual public comments, you will need to join the Zoom meeting as an attendee by calling by telephone 1-253-215-8782 and enter meeting ID 868-7263-2373. Or visit zoom.us and enter meeting ID 868-7263-2373. Upon entering the meeting, please enter your name using the raise hand feature to be called upon. For those participating by calling in by telephone, to use the raise hand feature, press *9 on your phone. When you're unmuted, please provide your name and city of residence. Outside of public comments, all attendees on Zoom will continue to have the ability to virtually raise your hand for the duration of the meeting. You will not be acknowledged and your microphone will remain muted except for when you are called upon. So let's start here in person. I have some signatures in. I don't know that all of you want to speak, but let's start with Roger Neal. Roger, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name is Roger Neal. I'm from the town of Steilacoom, but tonight I am representing AARP Driver Safety. And we have a proclamation, not a proclamation, a certificate of appreciation to read to you and on behalf of the city of Lakewood. So the certificate, I will let you see it. Clerk, I'll give it to you when we get done. The city of Lakewood, who reached a milestone of having hosted 11 driver safety courses for 108 participants during calendar year 2025. You have made a difference in the lives of many. In a little bit of context, the city of Lakewood tied for number 2 statewide in the number of courses had hosted. And unfortunately, we were only 7 participants less than the number 1 course in the state. So I've been involved with AA driver safety for many years and over 10 years with the city of Lakewood. I want to acknowledge 2 of your staff people that are here tonight, Elizabeth Scheid, Debbie Washburn. They are the 2 that make this work. And I'm going to give you an example in a minute of what great staff people they are. So last December, we had already scheduled the class, and the city of Lakewood decided to have an employee gathering. Well, City Hall was closed, but Debbie came in and she stood outside in the cold December morning, making sure that every participant got into the building. And that, without that kind of partnership, we would not be able to do these classes. So I just wanted to point that out to you. And that I will also point out that most of our participants, although many are from Lakewood, they're from all over Pierce County and Thurston County. And I've noticed that most of them go off-site to eat lunch. So we're contributing a little bit to your sales tax revenue. So with that, again, Elizabeth and Debbie, thank you for being here tonight. We couldn't do it without you. We couldn't do it without the partnership of the city of Lakewood. And we're going to try and do 12 classes this year and see if we can be number 1 in the state. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Neal, and former council member or town council member Neal in the.
Actually, I'm in my 3rd term, Mayor. I was reelected.
Okay, I
So,
apologize.
No, that's fine. So
We're
thank you.
glad to be doing that. I mean, Vision Zero is something that everyone in the state of Washington is involved in to reduce traffic fatalities, and this is an important part of it. So thank you very much for your efforts, and thank you for your kind words to staff.
They're great ambassadors for the city of Lakewood. Thank you, Mayor.
Next up, Jason Gerwin. Jason.
Damien's still here. Damien, a youth council member, he shows up to every Parks Board meeting with Zoe Clifford. Talk about 2 dedicated youth council members. Need to call them out. But I'm here to talk about the H Barn. Attended the last city council meeting and was a little not pleased with kind of what I was hearing. And so in regards to the H Barn, it's not a new idea. The record shows the project has been discussed, studied, and supported by the community for over 20 years. Formal evaluation going back to 2008 and 2009 identified the H Barn as the most viable structure for reuse. Over multiple councils and boards, this has consistently been identified as a priority by Lakewood. That was all until I came to the last council meeting, and I definitely heard some wavering. And I think a lot of that has to do with new council members, new staff, and they haven't lived the history. I've been a part of that over your 20-year history on the H Barn, and hugely significant project that is extremely important to not only the city itself, but the community. And I have a bunch of issues that I had written down at the last meeting. We had an ad hoc committee meeting prior to this meeting, but in that ad hoc committee meeting, I don't feel like we even scratched the surface in educating the new council members on maybe things they need to hear. And so I did draft a 4-page memo that I'll leave with the clerk, and I'll be prepared to email that to you at the when I return home this evening so you can all read it. Some of the context has changed based on that ad hoc meeting and other things I've heard, but gives you some context. And so some of my thoughts in there may have changed since then, but it was where I was feeling at the end of that last city council meeting. And so I can use my last minute, or if so kindly be extended a couple minutes, it'd be appreciated. But, one of the big things I think you need to hear tonight is LEED certification. I heard that. Should we do LEED certification or not? I think you need to make the decision now. It doesn't matter which way you go. We support sustainable design, but generally they call it a green tax, which is about 20% more when you want to go for LEED certification. Now, 20% is a little high. It's probably more like 6 to 12%, but it's upfront costs upfront, but you get a nice certification with it. The thing is, you'll get that payback, but it's not going to be for 10, 15 years. But you're doing a good thing to save this planet, right? We all need to be taking steps to do that. The one thing that has not been in question is the community is clamoring for indoor space. And in my mind, after 20 years, the thing that was most disappointing about the ad hoc meeting a little bit earlier was all the talk was about what we should do to cut or how do we change this building to fit it into a nice budget. And to me,
Wrap it up.
wrap it up. And so I'll leave it on this last point. There was not one discussion of how are we going to find and make this plan happen. And that's always been the attitude of Lakewood City Council, Lakewood Park staff is we make stuff happen in this community when at times it doesn't feel like it's even possible. And so to me, let's not talk about how we're going to cut this facility. Let's talk about how we're going to build the facility this community wants, needs, and has been clamoring for 20 years. Thank you.
Jason. Next up, Joel Verana.
Good evening, council members. My name is Joel Verana. I am president of the Eagle Point Homeowners Association, and I would like to speak just for a few minutes about the quality of American Lake. But before I do that, I want to thank your mayor and your city manager and council member Brandsetter. In the last week or so, I've seen them in multiple positions, actually out in the community with the constituents, with hands-on. And it's not just what you do here in chambers, it's really what you do out in the community that makes this really work so well. So thank you for that. The city has developed their own American Lake Management District, which has been a godsend for our milfoil situation. And we are much, much better off on American Lake for that. And that's really nice, but it's actually a tip of the iceberg for the situations and problems that we do have on American Lake with invasive and noxious aquatic weeds. If anybody has spent time on American Lake over many, many years, you'll find that it's deteriorated poorly over time. We've got filamentous green algae that's not under control. And some of these things can be handled with the permits that the city currently holds. We have kind of gotten together with shoreline owners and developed some petitions that will allow the shoreline owners to actually pay and participate for the cleanup of American Lake. It doesn't have to cost the council or the city to do this. We will take it on with your permission, but we need your cooperation in our permits to be able to do this. Not only do we have these algae blooms and a lot of noxious weeds. I mean, I haven't been able to swim off of my dock. I live on the lake. I've not been able to swim off my dock for the last 10 years due to the amount of aquatic growth that we have there. And a lot of owners have those same experiences. So it does have effects on recreational use, property values, et cetera. It also has a lot of effects to the cyanobacteria that can grow in there, which is kind of a $10 word, but it's noxious problems that can cause people to become very, very ill. And we don't want to have that liability with the city. We are willing to pay to get that done. We have learned from other lakes around the county and around the state that have all this phosphorus content that watersheds into their lakes that allow for all this growth that they've not done well managing. And we want to manage ours, and we want to do it earlier than later, before it's terribly dangerous. And we will pay to do it, but we need your help in getting that done. Most lakes are paying dollars and dollars per lineal foot. In Spanaway, they pay about $4. On Steilacoom Lake, they pay $12 a foot to do this. We believe we can do a good job for around $5, and we want your permission to go ahead and raise that money and utilize that money at no cost to the city if that can be allowed. So when the ALMD comes to you, please work with them and allow these things to happen. I'm sorry, I'm over my time, but
Thank you very much.
it's an important
Mr.
thing.
Miranda.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Any questions?
No, but
No. Okay.
I have Joel Kangiser. I butchering that name. Sorry.
Hello, it's Joel Congeezer, and I live in the same community as Joel Verana does. And I'm retired, so I spend a lot of time out on American Lake. And there are some major problems there. What I wanted to emphasize is that we believe, and we've gotten a lot of support from the shoreline owners we've talked to, and we really believe that we can get a positive approval of assessment changes and that type of thing. So all of this would be paid for. And I happened to look at the City Council's vision statements and goals, and it mentions 2 times about positive change and moving forward, kind of depending on your resources. So this would be some changes. If we raise those assessments, it would be positive changes. You'd be heroes to a lot of the lake owners or lakeshore owners out there. Positive changes without any worry about funding, because we're in it. We've been involved with this for months, and we believe we can get that positive approval of assessment changes to take care of these problems. And so anyway, that's all what I wanted to say. So I'm very much approve of what Joel said. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Paul Bryce.
Hello, Mayor, council members. My name is Paul Bryce, long-term resident in Lakewood in over 23 years. I'm here because I'm always told, you know, to get change, you got to keep coming, and it helps make change happen. And I'm here to talk about cannabis retail, not producer processing where you might find odors or smell, but simply cannabis retail. It's been a big thing, you know, every city, everyone's needing money. There's the millionaire's tax. I've been coming to meetings here, hearing about a 900-year-old tree that's going to be chopped down for businesses. I'm not sure what the outcome on that is yet, but, you know, clearly for money, low-income housing going into the middle of the town center. Again, you know, money. Cannabis has been around 13 years as a retail. We only see it gaining ground throughout the whole country, just more and more states coming on board, and it's not like it's new anymore. We have enough time to see that, just like banks or whatever the fear is of it being burglarized, retail spots are opening up with better understanding how to open up. Just because there was all the items on the shelf, you know, some early on and being a major cash place only, you know, was a target. But just like anything, clearly it's a business that people support, and they keep improving, because clearly all the money that's coming in is just shows like, I'm not the only minority here saying this is something I want. Now, for myself, yes, medically, and I own a couple of retail stores. Most of my customers are 40, 50 years old. We're talking about edibles and CBD creams, lotions, you name it. It's not just to get high. It's a lot of this is for medicine. And really, after all this time, knowing that our state's not even having social equity come about, and living here in Lakewood and knowing how diverse it is, and hearing for everything for the brown and Black communities, this is something I would think Lakewood should really get behind, as I've seen other cities also get behind. And, you know, we're not talking about just open the gates and have a pot shop everywhere. I mean, you guys are able to do a pilot program, maybe allow 1 or 2 pot shops. Again, talking about shops. We're not talking about agriculture. We're not talking about having it smell like crazy. For product, lotions, edibles, none of that even smells like marijuana. And for the bags, they all have to be either a Mylar or a jar, which really cuts down any types of smell, and for that matter. And then, the worry about the kids, like, the minute this goes descheduled and we start talking about Safeways and whatever the pharmacies can sell, like, the kids are in all of those stores. No kids are ever allowed in any of these pot shops whatsoever. So, like, I can answer any of the questions or concerns you guys might have because I am the East Side representative for Washington State for the Cannabis Alliance Council and LCB. Like, we can answer anything that you guys might have a question that you think is like harmful for everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Bryce. Appreciate it. Next up, Christina Minetti.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I can smell marijuana all around my house. All the neighbors smell it. It stinks. I hate it. And please don't make it any easier to get it close to where I live. Christina Minetti, Lakewood. I've lived in the general area of Edgewater Park since 1977, and I used to ride by it, as I mentioned before, on my bike when I was a kid. I've lived just a couple of blocks away since 2013, and tonight I'm asking you to reconsider what is being planned at Edgewater Park because it's not just misguided, it is astonishingly short-sighted. Specifically, the Portland Loo is being presented as a simple public amenity and something positive. Obviously, people have to pee and stuff, but it's not that simple. It's a structure that has cost cities on the order of $90,000 to $100,000, or even much, much more, even like $1 million in New York City. And it comes with very real, very predictable consequences. These units are designed with blue lighting, specifically to make it harder for intravenous drug users to find veins. Many include sharps disposal boxes for used needles. Think about that. These features exist because of the behavior that these things attract. I don't want that in my neighborhood. And the track record around the country is clear. A Portland police officer described one as a favorite nighttime destination for drug dealers and prostitutes. In San Diego, residents called it a magnet for crime and homelessness, as if we need more of that. And the city ultimately removed one after increased crime and maintenance problems. Seattle itself has already removed Portland Loos. These are not isolated anecdotes, they are patterns, and I'm sure that you guys must have heard about it when you were considering it. Even the limited success stories come with a catch. These facilities only work when they are actively monitored. In California, observers concluded that the key to success was a human attendant on site. So where is that in this plan? Are we staffing this restroom, or are we just simply hoping that reality will not apply to Edgewater Park? Meanwhile, Edgewater already struggles with trash, noise, and irresponsible use. You're not solving that, you are intensifying that with the Portland Loo. A permanent unsupervised restroom in an adjacent parking area will not sit quietly in winter. I mean, maybe you're gonna seal it all off, I don't know. They'll become a destination during the majority of the year when the park itself is empty. I guess some people are sleepy. And at what cost? Probably at least $100,000 and quite possibly more. I haven't seen the figure. Maybe you should wait to see how the situation with the new Portland Loo at Ward's Lake Park turns out. No? This plan reflects bureaucratic tunnel vision fueled by grants and mysterious unspoken motives that confuses installing infrastructure with solving problems. It ignores decades of real-life observations from the people who actually live there. It's not thoughtful planning, it's the exact opposite, ignoring the obvious. Thank you. And now one from the Gary O Coalition, Lakewood, Christina Minetti, Gary O Coalition. The other day I drove by the corner of 112th and Interlochen Drive and was stunned to see what had taken place there. The clear cutting of full 2 acres of some of the most heavily forested land in Lakewood. I saw it earlier, but it really hit me the other day. Council members, have you seen the site with your own eyes? You should really make a point of going. The day I was there, I saw an area of blinding sun where there used to be a dense forest. The trees in the surrounding forest will now suffer from the edge effect, quite possibly also dying because of the adjacent forest that they've been part of has been stripped away, and much of it asphalted over. The trees in a forest live in one system. Taking part away harms the rest. I'm here today to ask on behalf of the Gary O Coalition that the city, under your direction, now take decisive action to ensure that this never happens again in the city of Lakewood. We anticipate the city's usual response. That was under the old tree code. But what, in substance, has really changed? The new code may require permits where the old one did not, but a permit is not protection. So, meanwhile, The city has adopted a goal of 40% canopy cover by 2050. How does clear cutting an intact forest move us towards that goal? It doesn't. Remember, people often try to justify environmental destruction like this by saying that it's for affordable housing. No one can argue with that, right? Someone said this project would be missing middle housing, but that's just not true. These homes are being listed now for around $1 million. One is $1,039,950 on Zillow today. And no matter what kinds of houses were put there, they needed to be built in a way that would be in harmony with the environment, which means less density and more tree preservation. What happened at 112th and Interlochen has reminded us of tree preservation code that does not, in practice, even in its new and improved form, preserve trees. If Lakewood is serious about protecting its canopy and habitats, then the answer is not to doggedly defend the current code. It is to fix it. The tree code must be revised again, strengthened, and made to actually do what it claims, truly protect the trees and the ecosystems that remain. Otherwise, it's just a matter of time until we witness another devastating clear cut like the one on the corner of 112th and Interlochen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minetti. Mr. James Dunlop. And now, Mr. Dunlop's the last one that signed up, but anybody else who wants to speak after him here, and you'll get your chance after he speaks.
Hello, my name is James Dunlop, and I am a Lakewood resident. I want to sort of continue on the theme of Edgewater Park. So, the temperature is now going up. We've had the first sort of real spring days, and I get a chance to walk by it, and people are enjoying Spring Park, Edgewater Park, and I'm just wondering, why? Why is the city doing what it's doing or planning on doing what it's doing? Firstly, they eminent domained Dr. Mujallili's house, and that is something that was appalling. As I've said on numerous occasions, this would not, I don't believe, have happened if Dr. Mujallili had been a white, retired, for example, colonel in the US Air Force. So I think the city needs to really think about that. But additionally, the concept of turning that property into a parking lot for trailers is really absurd. I mean, what kind of a group are you really catering for? I mean, when I remember when you had the talk about equity, you said, oh, you've got to open that park up because it's all about equity. Well, walking past that park, I see that people are using that Dr. Mujallili's old property. They're fishing off his dock. Of course, I'm a vegetarian, and if I had my way, fishing would be banned, but that's not really the point. The point is people are using that part of the park, and it's a very small park, so you're going to use it for a parking lot, and rather than just extending the park, I mean, that seems to be a logical thing to do. And I wonder, really thinking about the themes that Christina Minetti was talking about, has anyone in the city really modeled what's going to happen in Edgewater Park once the plans get fulfilled? What is going to happen, for example, when you put the lavatory in, or whatever you call it, okay, there is the potential of crime and drug use and so forth. What is going to happen? I mean, has someone really thought about it? And I don't think they have. I think that someone in the city is just thinking about the present. Maybe there's a grant involved. And I think that, it's going to be quite devastating for anyone actually living on Edgewater Park, because I think it could seriously damage the area. And I think that this talks about division in Lakewood. I don't think I know people on the Edgewater Park side, those properties are quite expensive, but if they live on the other side of the lake, those properties are super expensive. I don't think the city would have treated those property owners like that. So I think we're seeing a bit of a social and economic division here, but please do think about this Edgewater Park again. And I think you need to have an inquiry. Why are you doing it?
Thank you, Mr. Dunlop. Do we have anybody in chambers who who would like to speak, please introduce yourself and mention your city of residence. Welcome.
Thank you, Council. My name is Terry Wise. I'm a land use consultant. And I'm representing a client that owns property at, get my glasses on, 5105 Solberg Drive Southwest. And I believe there's an action before the council about an abatement action. I was contacted about this on Thursday afternoon, so I've had Friday and today to try to wrap my arms around this. So excuse me if I don't have all the facts, but as I understand it, this is a mixed-use commercial property, has 2 buildings on it. That one used to be a convenience store kind of facing out towards Solberg. And then there's a second building behind it that sounds like the upper story was office, not condos, but office units where they would share a kitchen and a bathroom and people would rent out the offices. My client, who has a residential background, bought the property with the idea of providing attainable housing, for folks. And again, her background is in residential real estate. I think she had no understanding of the difference between trying to develop property or remodel property from commercial to residential. It adds a layer of complexity that, frankly, was beyond her scope. She hired contractors to help her out that were also residential contractors, so it was beyond their scope. And she had a series of bad luck with incompetent contractors and even some unscrupulous ones. But they ended up tearing off a breezeway that was connecting the 2 buildings that did incorrectly. Consequently, it caused significant water damage. And I think I've talked to staff on this, and they have been, I think, bent over backwards to try to work with my client to try to resolve this. And but they've got to the point where they just don't feel like progress is being made. And so they've suggested that, the council vote to bulldoze the back building and send her the bill. There's some real issues with this property on the west side of it. I believe it's Clover Creek. Correct me if I'm wrong. That borders it. So we have the shoreline master program that encumbers this property. We've got fish and wildlife and wetland buffers, and we also have the stormwater management manual that has different setbacks. All those don't dovetail perfectly, but it looks like there's a 150-foot setback. My main concern at this point, and from reviewing the code, it's unclear to me, and I'm not great at this, but I'm pretty good at looking at code, whether or not they would have the ability to rebuild that back building with the existing impervious footprint, right? Because of the code, it's not clear that they would get credit for that impervious footprint. So I think that there needs to be, she's now got people involved that know what they're doing. I would beg that you don't approve this abatement. Give us a chance to figure out what to do with this property, because my fear is if we bulldoze it and then she can't rebuild, that we've irreparably harmed her.
Thank you, Mr. Wise.
Thank you.
Any other speakers, please come up to the podium. Introduce yourself, city of residence.
Good evening, Mayor and Deputy Mayor and members of City Council. As a refugee in this country, I worked very hard, graduated from college, and did the thing I'm supposed to do for the American dream, buy my first home, and from there started investing in real estate. And
Excuse me, let's hold it up. You need to give us your name.
oh, I'm sorry, Michelle Lee.
Michelle
I'm the
Lee.
owner of the property at 5105 Silver Drive, Southwest in Lakewood.
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
And so investing in real estate was the thing that I wanted to do to make extra income. And I met a pastor down in city of Lakewood. And from there, she started sharing with me about homeless people and displaced residents down here. And as I achieved my American dream, the next thing I wanted to do was to give back. And being in real estate, residential real estate, I have experience in that. When I heard about this, I thought, okay, they advertise it with income, this, and they have residents in there renting. And I thought, okay, I'll just take over, hand it over to the pastor and, go from there. And that is the way for me to give back. Long story short, it didn't work out. She didn't pay rent. She took a rent and left, me with the project. So I took over. And little did I know, that's when all of this stuff came up as the zoning. And, I'm not supposed to rent out these as residents and all of that. So as soon as I heard about that and I got called to correct the problem, it was like 2 years ago, I understand. But a problem like this, it takes time for me to save up a lot of money to correct it, which I've been doing. And I hired 2 licensed, bonded contractors to help me. And these are referrals from people here in Lakewood, because I live in Seattle. I'm not from this area. And they took my money, didn't do the work, and left. And I had to learn how to submit permits online with the gracious help of all the staff member at the city department. But the next guy who came in, he did the same thing and he took off the roof, which he was not supposed to do until he was done with everything else. The roof was the last piece. And that's when the water damage come in. And the city, I have until June or May to finish this project, but I just found out about this abatement like a couple of days ago as well. And as soon as I heard that, I called so many different people and finally got a hold of Mr. Wise to help me and educated me on the differences between residential real estate and commercial are 2 different things. Residential is location, but here is the zoning. And this is the first time I'm learning all of this. I'm willing to cooperate with the help of Mr. Wise to help me through this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. Is there anybody else here in the chambers that would like to speak? Anybody else? Okay, Ms. Schumacher will go online. Is there anybody online who would like to speak? It looks like we've got a couple of people there.
We'll start with Tisha Moore Dunlop.
Mr. Dunlop, welcome. You've got 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. My name is Tihomir Dunlop. I'm a resident of Lakewood. I'm here to ask that the city take action to prevent future clear cuts like the one I recently saw on the corner of 112th and Interlochen. It's an area I'm very familiar with because I used to go to Idlewild Elementary and the German school up the street. It shocked and hurt me to see what had happened. I loved that forested stretch of road. I was a member of Lakewood's ad hoc tree committee in 2022, and I'm convinced that the changes that resulted from those code revisions do not adequately protect Lakewood's trees. The land on 112th was clear-cut for a subdivision of 11 houses. This was mature native forest, including protected Gary oaks and their habitat, which were part of a larger grove that spanned multiple properties. And yet, this forest and protected oak habitat was treated like garbage to be cleared. On paper, there was a quote-unquote habitat assessment, but the man conducting it admitted under oath that he could not even identify common local birds, referring to them simply as little birds. That's not an expert opinion, it's procedural theater. What was really lost? Gary oaks are not just trees, they are a basis for an entire habitat. They are closely associated with species like the western gray squirrel, which is state endangered in Washington and depends on oak and mixed oak Douglas fir forests for its survival. Was that habitat properly assessed? From what I heard, or what we heard at the appeal in 2023, there's no evidence that it ever was. The Douglas squirrel, which had been documented on the site, was also part of this ecosystem. According to the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, Douglas squirrels are protected species in Washington, whose decline is likely due to the loss of preferred habitat, mature mixed conifer forests, which of course is exactly the kind of habitat that Lakewood allowed to be destroyed. Neighbors spoke up and clearly said that they wanted the forested character of their neighborhood preserved. They understood what would be lost. But, like elsewhere, the city and the hearing examiner it had hired disregarded those concerns and sided with the developer. The comprehensive plan repeatedly requires that new development be compatible with and not undermine the character of established neighborhoods. This neighborhood's forest is its most important feature, and now a chunk of that has been taken out of it and habitat destroyed. It's time for you and the city to revise the tree code so that it actually protects Lakewood's trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlop. Next up is Mr. Joe Ramos. Mr. Ramos,
Hello.
thank you.
Hi. Joseph Ramos for the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. Speaking on item 212, AGLA represents 10,000 rental housing providers throughout Los Angeles, including many in Lakewood. More than 80% of our members are small owners with 20 or fewer units. City staff has done no outreach whatsoever to the impacted rental housing providers for their input prior to bringing forward this draft ordinance. This ordinance will impact all rental housing providers, including single-family, accessory dwelling units, condominiums, duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. These are all small owners currently providing affordable rental housing for working families in Lakewood. As such, they are likely rental housing providers with the least understanding of city requirements governing business, and many probably do not even consider themselves as business owners. Suddenly requiring registration and inspection could create a chilling effect on these owners and cause them to leave the rental housing market entirely. This would significantly and suddenly reduce the supply of affordable rental housing in Lakewood. There has been no data gathered by staff nor analysis offered as to potential impacts of this ordinance on this expanded segment of rental housing providers and the city's existing rental housing stock. We urge the city to delay taking any action on this draft ordinance. Instead, we request that the city council direct city staff to conduct several in-person and virtual town hall meetings with impacted property owners to obtain information on the likely impacts of such an ordinance and solicit input on the language for the draft ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos. Are there any other people who are willing to speak there?
Mayor, there are no other virtual hands raised at this time.
Thank you. I would note, I hope Mr. Ramos is on. This is Lakewood, Washington, and we already have the rental safety plan in place. And so we're making changes to it. It is not Lakewood, California, just in case. He might be representing investors up here, but just want to make sure he understands that. So we have no one else?
Mayor, we do not.
So I'm going to close public comment and we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Consent agenda. A, approval of the minutes of the City Council study session of March 9th, 2026. B, approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting of March 16th, 2026. C, approval of claims vouchers in the amount of $4,457,692.38 for the period of February 14th, 2026 through March 13th, 2026. D, approval of payroll checks in the amount of $3,082,837.44 for the period of February 16th, 2026 through March 15th, 2026. E, motion number 2026-23, authorizing the execution of a grant agreement with Washington State Military Department in the amount of $50,009 for the Emergency Management Performance Grant. F, motion number 2026-24, authorizing the execution of an amendment extending the term of the agreement with Keller Associates to assist in updating the Lakewood Municipal Code Title 12 and the Engineering Standards Manual. G, motion number 2026-25, authorizing the award of an abatement contract to DP Excavation, Inc. in the amount of $71,181.85 for the abatement of 5105 Solberg Drive Southwest. H, motion number 2026-26, authorizing the award of a community development block grant major home repair loan in the amount of $75,000 and a construction contract with FRN Corporation in the amount of $68,922.60 for the rehabilitation of 9005 Highland Ave Southwest. I, items filed in the office of the city clerk. 1, Community Services Advisory Board meeting minutes of January 22nd, 2026. 2, Community Services Advisory Board meeting minutes of February 19th, 2026. 3, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting minutes of February 24th, 2026. And 4, Planning Commission meeting minutes of March 4th, 2026.
Thank you, Ms. Schumacher. Are there any items that any member of the council would like pulled from the consent agenda? And I believe Councilmember Lindholm.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given the public comment we've received, I would move to have 2026-25 removed from the consent agenda so we can talk about it.
Thank you very much. So item G, motion number 2026-25, which is authorizing the award of an abatement contract to DP Excavation at 5105 Solberg Drive is being pulled from the consent agenda. Are there any other items that members of the council would like pulled from the consent agenda tonight? Okay, seeing that, I don't think I need a second, right? We can just go forward with it.
Correct, Mayor, you do not need a second.
Huh? You don't need one? Right. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as amended, okay, Councilmember Brenstetter?
Mayor, I would just like to make a comment before we vote in terms of discussion in that included in the consent agenda items being filed include some minutes from the Community Services Advisory Board. And I was pleased to note that in these minutes that this year that board has moved to make some positive recommendations regarding the use of opioid abatement funds, which we tasked them to do quite some time ago, and they have been very deliberate about, but that we're going to move forward to getting some impact. And so I'd just like to say that these minutes are praiseworthy with respect to the work of that advisory board.
Thank you for pointing that out, Councilmember Brenstetter. It is something we've been waiting on, and I'm glad they were deliberate in there because there's no time frame on when we have to spend those funds, but I'm glad they're moving forward with that very important item. So all those in favor of approval of the consent agenda signify by saying aye. Oh.
Aye.
No, wait, are we going to be a motion?
Yeah.
Mayor,
Mr.
can I
Mayor,
get a motion for the consent agenda, please?
Can I get
minus
a
item number D?
motion to, that's okay. A motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Mayor, I move to adopt the consent agenda less item G.
And so I will second that motion.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda minus item G, which is motion number 2026-25. Any discussion? All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. The consent agenda as amended is approved. So let's go on to ordinance, to motion number 2026-25. Ms. Schumacher.
Motion number 2026-25, authorizing the award of abatement contract to DP Excavation, Inc. in the amount of $71,181.85 for the abatement of 5105 Solberg Drive Southwest.
Thank you, Ms. Schumacher. What staff is going to speak to this and do the introduction on this?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. So again, before you is a motion to approve the abatement for 5105 Solberg. I can kind of give you some background of this property. So it's a property that has a long time dangerous and nuisance history. The city issued the abatement complaint on June 20th, 2024. The city then followed with the abatement order that was issued July 23rd, 2024. The dates that were provided within the order to correct the property, and there was numerous issues. The property was used for housing 12 individuals. It was converted illegally from a commercial structure to a single family structure. This was actually the third such occurrence on the property. I have personally relocated people from the property 3 times in about a 15-year period. This was the most recent. When we inspected the property, there was all kinds of electrical modifications, interior structural modifications, mechanical, plumbing, all types of interior modifications. Myself, the building official, Labor and Industries, and the fire marshal all inspected the property and all identified additional dangerous and nuisance issues. Those were all addressed in the order. The order provided a September 30th, 2024 date to apply for permits to either repair or demolish the building. I can tell you to date, there were no permits from the city of Lakewood to apply any repairs. There was no permits to apply for demolition for the building that we're specifically talking. There were permits that were issued for the property on the front building. So the owner applied for some siding repairs and some miscellaneous sheetrock and so forth on the building in front of it. However, no permits were ever applied for this building. So the city, in order to demolish the building, we go through Pierce County Superior Court and obtain a warrant. We did that on 2 occasions. The first warrant was issued to the city November 6th, 2025. After that initial issue or warrant was issued, both myself and the building official conducted multiple walkthroughs. We again involved Labor and Industries, the fire marshal and so forth to try and get the owner to address the building. The owner was present. All issues were identified. Again, no permits were submitted. So the abatement order that was issued, the warrant from Pierce County Superior Court was issued November 6th, 2025. It has a 6-month time frame. And November 6th, the city realized that we were getting close to the timelines, and we negotiated with the owner a second abatement order. So the owner agreed to an extension of the first abatement order on November 6th. That was granted by Pierce County Superior Court, which then again 6 months later provided for an expiration date of May 6th of 2026, which brings us to where we are now. The city, in order to complete the process, we went through the bidding. We received a number of bids from individuals. They're considerably lower than my city estimate. There's kind of a lull in construction that I hadn't anticipated. So being able to take advantage of the cost savings would be one thing. The other issue with the property is it's currently and has been occupied by squatters again. So there's a number of occasions I was out on the property in the past 2 weeks. There were squatters in the building. I had police show up one day when we were there. They escorted 3 people out of the building and arrested 1. Went back about a week later, the building was broken into again and had the property owner secure it. So it continues to be a vacant nuisance property that squatters are actively occupying. The key issue here is the expiration of the May 6th abatement order and the warrant from Pierce County Superior Court. Were that to lapse and we were to go back to Pierce County Superior Court and try and get a third warrant, I'm not certain we would be successful in doing so because we had not met our first 2 agreements with Pierce County Superior Court. So doing that, I believe, would be an uphill battle. If we're not awarded another warrant on the property, it would stay as it is and it would be continuing to attract squatters and transients and so forth and continue to deteriorate and have water flow into the building. So that is my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Gum. Any questions for Mr. Gum? Councilmember Talbot, do you have your light on? Do you got any questions? Oh, okay. Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Gum, I understand there was an extension provided. And then how has communication gone to the applicant or the owner? Is this certified mail? Is this through our permit portal? How does the communications happen and notifications?
A number of different ways. So when we're doing the abatement process, all of those are given via certified mail and first class mail. So any of the orders and any of that is given to the owner. There's a number of emails that were sent back and forth to the homeowner, the property owner. We have the property owner's cell phone. So there's been a number of texts going back and forth, scheduling inspections, trying to get things fixed. So all of the communication has been kind of ongoing and upfront as we've gone through this process. When we're awarded the warrant, the 2 different warrants, the property owner is notified as that part of the process through our Pierce County Legal Department. So the owner is aware that we're getting a warrant and why we're getting a warrant. So they're involved all along the process.
Okay. And then a couple other, how would you say that this timeline compares to our other typical enforcement cases? And then is this decision similar and consistent with other cases that we've dealt with?
I can say this timeline is significantly longer than we would be addressing a property like this. It's a property that I can say, the building official, and I had this discussion today, I've never had the building official out on a abatement property going through what's required to be fixed with the homeowner and for the property owner, and literally going through a plan submittal that they're looking to submit to the city of Lakewood. So the building official was physically on this property and attempted to make the owner aware of the issues that needed to be corrected. We waited again since September of 2024 was the deadline that was known by the owner to fix these repairs, and we had never received a permit. So we waited substantially longer than we would. We were trying to give the owner time to fix the property, and instead she chose to address the property in front instead of hers.
Okay, and then thank you for that and your presentation, the information. That's all helpful. I guess I would just a general comment on this is that, you know, I think that we need to be mindful of our role on council, that, you know, we put forth policy and city staff enforce policy and the codes and stuff that are in place. And this is simply for a contract for your kind of typical abatement case, as I understand it. And I don't think it's, you know, really appropriate for us to be up here getting involved in individual code enforcement cases as it relates to the contract side, I guess. So I'll just say that. I appreciate your presentation and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pearson. I'm going to recognize the city manager because I think he wants to say them. But before that, I'm also, I don't see Mr. Lindholm or Councilmember Lindholm's hand, but he is, after the city manager's done talking, I'm going to ask Councilmember Lindholm to speak to this because he was the one that asked that it be pulled. So City Manager Russell.
Yeah, Councilmember Pearson actually addressed my comment in that this isn't actually approving the abatement, it's approving the contract to comply with our fiscal policies because it's over $50,000. That's why it's coming before council.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Councilmember Lindholm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first thing I should say, first of all, I just really appreciate the work the city has done to communicate with the property owner here. I think that's incredibly important. We want to do everything we can to be working with our folks, and we want them to work with us. That's better for everybody, right? If we can have a property owner proactively involved in improving a property, bringing it to code, all the things, that's a benefit both to the owner and to us. It means we're not using city funds to do the work and not trying to collect from and lean our property owners. I need to disclose that I do not have a professional relationship with Mr. Wise, but I do have a long-standing friendship and he's a former colleague of mine. And I will say this, I know him to be incredibly capable. I've seen him swoop in at the 11th hour for projects that were previously thought to be impossible and do impossible things. And it sounds like he's had approximately 3 business days on this project. I do not want to question our city staff or our city manager, but when I do think about a policy, I think about, I would hope that as a city, that one of our policies is to do all we can to work with property owners. And I think the city really has done that. The challenge here is, it sounds like to me, coming in again at the 11th hour, that we have a property owner who, no matter how much time she had to fix a problem, it was not a problem she was capable of fixing. She now maybe potentially has a team member that can get that done. And so I wonder, not dictating policy, but I wonder if we've waited 2 years, can we wait 2 more weeks to see if Mr. Wise can hammer out a mutually agreeable timeline with city staff? But again, I would expect to abstain from any vote on this.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindholm. Mr. Gum, are there any other comments from Councilmember Branstetter?
Yeah, Mr. Gum, I certainly concur with the idea that the documentation that you've provided that supported going forward with getting the bids for this contract is in line with the policy that we have had with abatements going forward, and that it doesn't seem to be any question that there were efforts to work with the property owner to try to allow her to take control of the situation and manage rehabilitation or, you know, of the property, and that we're now at a point of where Because unfortunately, it sounds like she was taken advantage of by some of the folks she was seeking to have to assist her. But that also that you've obtained a contract that is significantly below what was the city's estimate and the estimate of what it would cost to demolish or even to rehabilitate this program. And so it strikes me that the property owner is actually benefiting from the competitive bidding process that you have in terms of getting done what needs to be done with the owner. I get a lot of comments at neighborhood association meetings and things for people all really sort of wondering why abatement actions on buildings in their neighborhood seem to take a long time. And this packet that you've provided is actually a good instructional aid for people to see all the levels of effort that you and your staff go through, and then all of the legal hurdles that are involved with actually enforcing city policy to be able to go and do that. And I'm particularly disturbed to hear you tell us that even recently there are squatters occupying the building upon occasion to be able to go and do that. So I certainly think the time is right to do the action that you have proposed, the contract that you've negotiated. It's my intention to support it.
Okay, so before we really get into discussion here, we need to move and second this because we don't even have it on the table yet. So can I get a motion and a second on motion number 2026-25?
Mr. Mayor, I move adoption of motion to 2025-26.
Second.
Got a couple of seconds there. It's been moved and seconded. Motion number 2026-25. Further discussion, council members, anyone else would like to speak to this? Okay. Councilmember Lindholm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could just make one more comment, I think Mr. Branstetter is absolutely right that the property owner benefits from this contract, but they only benefit from that contract if the city does the work, because of course the city is paying prevailing wage. I would expect the property owner to be able to demolish at a substantially cheaper price, and she said so in her public comments. So I just want to make sure that's clear.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindholm. Are there any more comments from any members? Okay, so we are going to do voice vote on, or are you going to call the roll? I'm having a rough time tonight for whatever.
Mayor, would you like me to call roll?
Yeah, please call the roll.
So I have Councilmember Lindholm,
Abstain?
Councilmember Pearson,
Yes.
Councilmember Talbot,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Bell,
Aye.
Councilmember Branstetter,
Aye.
Councilmember Lorisella,
Aye.
and Mayor Boki.
Aye. So the motion passes. On to the regular agenda, ordinance number 849, Ms. Schumacher.
Ordinance number 849, amending Lakewood Municipal Code, Chapter 5.60, related to rental housing licensing and inspection requirements.
Thank you. And Mr. Gum, or you know what? I'm going to do this right. We are going to move and second this ordinance before we even begin discussion and have, so could I get a motion?
Mayor, I make a motion to move this.
Second.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Ordinance number 845, amending the Lakewood Municipal Code, Chapter 5.60. Ms. Schumacher, do you want to read that in?
Ordinance number 849, amending Lakewood Municipal Code, Chapter 5.60, related to rental housing licensing and inspection requirements.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gum, Planning Manager Jeff Gum.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. Again, before you is the an ordinance to approve number 849. This would modify Lakewood Municipal Code 5.60 rental housing licensing to change licensing and inspection requirements. This was reviewed before council on March 16th. At that review, I wanted to follow back up and answer some questions. So there was a number of questions that were asked by council of staff, and I've gotten the answers, and I would like to present you with the info. So one of the questions was, what was the definition of new construction? So in your agenda packet, we've tried to reflect that with in 5.60, Article B, 5.60025 B, we've clearly defined what legally permitted new construction is. So the ordinance is supposed to provide an exemption for a newly constructed building. And the intent of newly constructed building is to have something that is legally permitted new construction. I mean, anybody can construct something. So the intention is to have something that was legally permitted, newly constructed. So that would be the definition of what is newly constructed under Lakewood Municipal Code 5.60. A second question was relating to one of the same exemptions in the same 5.60025 B2. The question was raised, was it a requirement of the RCW to have a section that had an exemption for a rental unit that was receiving funding subsidies from the federal, state, or local government that is inspected at least every 3 years as a requirement of the funding or subsidy, that provides a copy of the inspection to the city and for which the director determines that the inspection is substantially equivalent to the inspection required by this chapter. I can tell you, in reviewing RCW 5918-125, which is the enabling legislation for this, it specifically says a rental property inspected by a government agency or other qualified inspector within the previous 24 months may be provided, may provide proof that the inspection which the local municipality may accept in lieu of a certificate of inspection. So I'm not an attorney, but I can infer the term was used may and not shall. So the third question that was raised was what is done if what can be done if somebody's providing information in a self-certification that is either false or misleading. So in our certifications that the owners of the properties provide, we have added some clear language that specifically says if an owner knowingly and willingly provides false or misleading information, they're disqualified from future self-certifications from this property or any others. So the intention of the self-certification is to provide accurate information about the property. Does it not meet the code? And provide that to city staff, and then we're to use that accordingly. So I hope that answers the questions that was raised by council, and if there are any others, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gum. Are there any more questions for Mr. Gum? Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Gum. In the proposed ordinance, under section 1, there is some comments about the business license and fee. And in section 5.60/020, there is a section A that says the fee for such rental license shall be in accordance with LMC 320-010, the fee schedule. And it looks like that is changing the title of the fee. In that it used to be rental housing complex license. And so if this ordinance is approved this evening, are we then to expect a amendment to come forward to council of the fee schedule to make sure that the fee schedule is correctly annotating the license
I would have to look and double check, but I do not believe the rental license that's listed in the fee schedule is listed as a rental housing complex license. I believe it's just a rental housing license. But I would double check, and if it were not correct, then yes, we would have to.
Okay, just the way that the draft in our packet was inlined, it looked like there is that change because rental housing complex is lined out. And so, you know, if we're going to move this, it would be good to be able to amend this fee schedule before the ordinance becomes effective if the ordinance passes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Branstetter. Yeah, we should probably look at that to make sure the nomenclature is correct and either bring it forward right away or find out from council if we can, from legal counsel, whether that's something we can do when we do the budget later this year. Does that sound good? Is there anybody else who, someone? Eileen? Oh, you.
Taking a look at the schedule, the fee schedule now, but I believe Mr. Gum is correct. I think it's just rental housing safety inspection, and it doesn't refer to complex, but I need to verify. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments from council members? Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the discussion points that came up last time was about ADUs on owner occupied, like the owner occupies the primary dwelling unit and has an ADU in their backyard and the potential of having that as an exemption. I didn't see that in here. Is that something that we could move to have as an amendment in here, or is that something that is not allowed per the state laws or anything like that?
It could be allowed, and if council were to choose that, there's no requirement nor exemption that's in the code. So currently an ADU is required to be registered. There's some exemptions for any rental complex, depending who lives in it. So if one's mother or father live in it, or their children, their son or daughter, so forth, live in it, those are exempt units. But other than that, it's not considered exempt currently. It could be were council to choose.
Okay, thank you. And the reason I bring that up is because I feel like that's an element of this that really benefits Lakewood residents and the people that are working to try to provide affordable housing. And that's just an added layer of, you know, permitting and fees and stuff. If you're going to have someone living in an ADU in your backyard, you're going to be likely making sure that it's well kept and it's, you know, you're doing the right things, right? Rather than some investors owning, you know, all of these units and not kind of keeping tabs on them or whatever. They're really like their primary business. So anyway, once we get to it, I will be making that motion to amend. Thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions? So, Councilmember Lindholm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to double up on what Councilmember Pearson said. And, in my view, the rental safety program was designed to ensure that overall housing stock is safe, but we don't want to start inspecting owner-occupied properties, especially attached ADUs. In my view, we don't want to disturb the quiet enjoyment of Lakewood homeowners and the renters that choose to occupy those properties. So I'll be supporting Councilmember Pearson's amendment.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do remember part of that question coming up the last time we had the discussion. I think the reason, I guess, well, let me ask Mr. Gum first. If we did exempt ADUs, how would we have another mechanism of tracking their existence and their ownership status in the city?
I'm certain there's a way that we could track it. I'm certain that I am not tracking it. It would be through the building and permitting would be the way that you would track ADUs and so forth.
So I think my comment is I would be in support of including them and keeping the language as it is in this ordinance relative to ADUs. I understand that I understand the perspective that ADUs can be seen as an innocent, less offensive, less provocative form of a rental situation. But at the same time, I think that if ADUs are exempt from business license requirement, the city loses its ability to track its actual housing capacity. And from a data consistency standpoint, including them allows the city to verify if the density increase is actually resulting in the long-term results, or if the units are just being converted into short-term rentals. And I have nothing against short-term rentals, but I want to touch on that in a second too. But at the same time, from an infrastructure planning point of view as well, knowing exactly how many people live in ADUs helps us, the city, plan for utility loads, parking demand, and emergency service allocation. So exempting ADUs from licensing fees and expansion requirements that larger landlords must follow can create some friction. I remember too, so when the state changed the legislation in 22 that increased the density requirements, this was during COVID, and at the same time, ADUs, even prior to COVID, were kind of getting a bad rap nationwide because heinous things were happening in certain cities. And so Airbnb was getting a bad rap. And so when we were having community discussions through the reach out sessions for the comp plan update, people did ask questions and bear some concerns about, well, you know, how do we ensure the safety and the livability and the habitability of ADUs? And so I think since then, I think primarily because apps and companies like Airbnb and VRBO have tightened and made some changes to their rental model that have kind of addressed those, the accountability for rental units, that those types of crimes or offenses you haven't seen as much of them, but I think nonetheless, the concern remains. So I'm not quite in favor of exempting ADUs. I would prefer to keep them into the ordinance as is. Thank you.
Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a clarification. So my amendment wouldn't be to straight up exempt all ADUs. It would be to exempt ADUs on owner occupied parcels. So I just want to make that clarification because now under state law, you don't have to be an owner on the parcel to have ADUs. You could just buy a parcel with 3 or 4 ADUs on it or whatever. So that's the clarification. If an owner occupies the primary unit or one of the units, then that would be where the exemption would follow. And we have Mr. Remack in here that might be able to address the permitting elements of this, because I understand that ADUs are on title and they have to go through a separate permitting process. So it's very trackable. This is not our avenue for tracking. This is the avenue of rental safety housing and that part of it. And if they don't have ADU permits, then that would go through code enforcement, as those are, but I'll let staff talk about that a bit more.
So certainly. So ADUs are a separate unit that we can look at. We do have the building permit that would go with that. At the same time, I'll take a moment to speak to ADUs and zoning law have changed. ADUs can be sold outright. A unit lot subdivision can be done now. So they're not really like they used to be, where they're directly always tied to that property. So for that fact, we do track and watch where the ADUs are at. The other thing when I was reading through at the same time is, while we're talking about rentals and what we're looking at, there is a caveat for if it's owner, child, or parent to go ahead and be exempt from being in the rental. And the historical, when you look at it, most of ADUs are either grandmother, father, son, their familial units and what people are looking at. So we would be able to track the permits when they come in, but they also have the ability to sell. So watching the owner occupied would be where we don't really have a mechanism currently built on how we would do that.
Okay. I do want to follow up on that before Councilmember Laura Salas. So And I appreciate what Councilmember Pearson's trying to do. And because my concern is there's hundreds of homes in the city, maybe 100 homes or more that are owned by like Invitation Homes. So they could theoretically tomorrow ask for 100 ADUs. We would have to permit them basically, right, under state law.
Yes. Not 100, but they could get far more than their zoning used to allow under state law.
Yeah, okay. So they could build a lot.
Yes.
It would meet, what the goals of the state are. Now, we're gonna try to write an amendment and I'm gonna to speak to that. It would exempt an owner occupied property if it was owner occupied, the primary home was owner occupied.
Yeah, and I'd make, so what Mr. Remack is talking about is they could be unit lot subdivided and sold off. That is no longer an ADU at that point. That's just a primary dwelling unit, correct?
Yeah, yes, it's
So
yes and no. You can sell an ADU. They basically claim now that an ADU is a standalone home, where it used to be, yes, as accessory in the dwelling unit, but you can make it a standalone home at any time.
But it becomes a separate tax parcel, right?
Yes, you would do
Yeah,
unit lot
so
subdivision, you get a second tax.
I guess that's where like the language here, I just needs to be clear that it's on the same tax parcel. The goal is that if someone has a half an acre and they want to have their son live in one, and it's economical to build a duplex or 2 attached or detached ADUs, that they're treated like the same way, and they're they're living in one of the units, maybe their child living in another, and they have a friend that wants to live in the other one, and they're all treated the same. That's the goal here that I'm trying to get across. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate Councilmember Pearson's perspective, Councilmember Talbot's perspective, and I think we're talking in hypotheticals. If we talk experience and data, Mr. Gum, do we have examples of owners that live on parcels that are renting out ADUs that were not compliant?
Yes, as I've inspected in the past, when Councilmember Talbot asked, I'm trying to rack my brain and think of the ADUs that we've inspected over the years. And yeah, we have had properties that are owner occupied and the ADUs don't comply. I don't know the exact number. I mean, it's not going to be a huge number, but there are units that do not comply. I mean, we've also have parcels that have ADUs that they're both renter occupied, and I can think of one that I inspected last week that both of them failed. So,
okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lindholm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just say a couple more things. I really appreciate the perspectives that are being expressed here. There's a real attention to detail, which I appreciate. So just a couple things. Councilmember Talbot mentioned a concern for making sure that we have accurate density numbers for planning, making sure that we can provide power and sewer and water and all these things. And that's a great concern following all the changes in housing, right? Because now we can have higher densities on lots. The reality, though, is that's not an ADU issue. That's an issue in general. If you drive down any given road, you have no idea how many people are living in those homes. And the rental rules are now such that landlords cannot prohibit multiple people, for example, from living in a one-bedroom apartment. So we can't get accurate numbers just by making somebody pay a license fee every year. The other piece I'm concerned about is, I believe it was Mr. Remack, mentioned that historically, it's traditionally been a family member who's been in the ADU. I want to be careful, though, that we're not discriminating against different types of family. The family is changing, and I think Lakewood Code would want to make sure to change too, that we're not expecting people to live as they lived 20 years ago. If they have a very close friend to whom they do not wish to marry, or pick any number of scenarios that we can all think of, one should not be treated differently than the other, in my view. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindholm. So we don't have an amendment in front of us. I believe the amendment has a number of facets to it. And so we're going to need this in writing somehow. So what I'd like to do is
Mayor,
get staff and especially Councilmember Pearson, but it sounds like there's also several other interested members in writing an amendment because it's there's different facets to it, and I just want to make sure we just don't start putting loopholes in this thing that people drive trucks through. That's my concern. It doesn't sound like we'll have that problem, but Councilmember Bell.
Yes, Mayor. I would like to make a motion to move that we push this out 2 weeks so that staff can have the appropriate time to work on the amendment and the wording, and so that we're not doing it up here and adding to the confusion.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we continue ordinance number 849, I believe, until the meeting of April 20th, and we will expect an amendment at that time. In writing, please.
May I make one comment?
Yeah.
Council reviewed Mr. Branstetter's comment about the rental licensing, and the language in 3.20 is consistent with the language that we have. It would not conflict. There'd be no required change.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for handling that quickly. So does everyone understand what we're going to vote on? Okay, all those in favor of continuing ordinance number 849 to the meeting of April 20th, 2026, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Okay, we have continued ordinance number 849 to the meeting of April 20th, and we will be looking, hopefully maybe we can even discuss the amendment at study session next week, if that's possible. Thank you. Okay, ordinance number 850, Ms. Schumacher, could you please read it in?
Ordinance number 850, enacting an additional sales and use tax of 0.1% as authorized in section 201, chapter 350, Laws of Washington 2025 for criminal justice purposes, creating a new section of Lakewood Municipal Code Title III, Revenue and Finance, chapter 3.90, 0.1% public safety sales tax, and providing for severability and establishing an effective date.
Okay, so let's, thank you for reading in the record, but I keep screwing up the order. We need it moved and seconded.
Mayor, I would like to move that we move forward ordinance number 850.
I will second.
It's been moved, ordinance number 850 has been moved and seconded. It's already been read into the record. Thank you very much, Ms. Schumacher. Mr. Vargas.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. I'm starting on page 219 of your packet tonight. We are looking at the public safety sales tax ordinance here. Just a bit of synopsis here under discussion that the city must add about 1.0 FTE public defenders each year between now 2026 and 2036 to comply with the new caseload limits. And still provide adequate public defense for up to 1740 case equivalents, which is what we're currently contracted at. Current revenue sources do not support the increased staffing requirements and are anticipated to lead to reductions and limitations in projects and/or service delivery levels. The public safety sales tax is an authorized revenue source that would mitigate the impact of these requirements moving forward. As for a fiscal impact, table A there shows the projected sales tax revenue. You've seen this table before. It's the same table. Essentially, the sales tax revenue completely funds the primary public defense annual contract cost through 2027, so next year. And starting in 2028, the projected sales tax revenue is less than the contract cost projected, with the difference growing to nearly 2.1 million by 2035. As for alternatives, the city council may choose not to authorize the sales tax, and the city would continue to use general fund monies to cover the cost of public defense moving forward. And the fiscal impact is attached in attachment A, that table. So that is all.
Thank you, Mr. Vargas. We've had a number of discussions surrounding this. So any council member comments or questions for Mr. Vargas or any other staff? Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Vargas, can you talked about alternatives here. continue to use the general fund monies to cover these costs, and these are estimated to the tunes of multiple millions of dollars. So we'd be looking at areas where we probably have bigger budgets in the general fund. So can you kind of enlighten me on where a majority of the general fund monies are spent, and probably maybe some targeted areas for cuts?
Yeah, if I may go ahead and jump in on that one. We also have Todd Cross, our finance director here. This has been a point of discussion going back. Actually, the very first time that I remember it was when I was in the audience interviewing, and it was a topic of the Supreme Court decision and the impact that it was going to be. We brought it back up and discussed it in last fall, and council elected not to move forward with it. We talked about it in November as part of the mid-biennium budget going forward. And in there, we identified future funding considerations, and I'll get around to your question in terms of other areas. But not only as we got to the end of 2025, did we already go through a reduction in staffing of 3 FTEs at that point, but we also had upcoming costs that were beyond our baseline 2026 budget, including the funding for Edgewater Park, for a total of $3.5 million for that. Our body camera system was funded with a one-time back in 2022. So we're going to have to find funding for those items in addition to the position for attorneys. So essentially, the identification would be that the general fund dollars that we're going to pay for public defense would then be freed up for these other things that we needed to find funding for. Now, in the absence of both those, we would be looking at further reductions throughout the organization. What we would start doing is identifying council priorities in terms of service levels. You've established those items in previous sessions. Should we not pass this, really what my request would be is that we dedicate a lot of our retreat to that very thing, because I don't know if it's very fair to identify the priorities in terms of the council related to a different time and place in funding to some very significant challenges council would face moving forward in terms of where those reductions would be. Basically what gets funded, the majority of our services in general fund are in law enforcement. That is one of our priorities. Hence, even our body camera system is a very significant component that we would try and find a way to fund. Does that mean we have fewer personnel across, the organization and all departments? Well, those would be very significant discussions that council would want to have in terms of what are now the priorities of council, not in the terms of priorities of growing, which was back in 2 years ago when those initial priorities were set, but what are the priorities now in the light of how significant cuts? And while we can go through and identify some of those things that would be there, it's going to run the spectrum to some very important programs the council has had, all the way from the priorities of public service, parks, human services, ancillary things, our contract services, all the way from some of our outreach to, our lobbyists. All those things would be discussed, component of really where that retreat is and what are those new priorities for council. Then we would come back with, okay, here's where we'd have to go. Probably look at a forecast because these additional costs continue to compound on a yearly basis as we meet those 10% reduction in caseloads for our city attorneys. So that's where I would take it in terms of guiding the council into service delivery levels and where reductions would be in the absence of moving forward with this or other revenue sources that would meet it, and what those challenges would be. So I know that doesn't get to specifics, but I think it would have to be a collaborative process of really reorienting ourselves to what are our new priorities in the face of reductions, because those may change some of the answers.
Well, I appreciate that response, and I think that it kind of hints at kind of what I'm getting at, I guess, is that we're not a full service city here. And so what do? We provide public safety largely. We probably spend 2/3 or 3/4 of our money on public safety. And then the other part that we do a lot of is we do parks projects and we maintain our roads, right? So we don't have sewer, we don't have water, we don't have other things that other cities do. And so we're really a pretty lean city. So when you're talking about making $2 million in cuts every year to try to deal with this, you're looking at, okay, where are we getting the big bang for our buck? And outside of the police department, we have like around 50 employees or something thereabouts. So
I think we're at 250 total, probably around 120 plus change in law enforcement. So
yeah,
probably half of the.
okay, half and half. Okay, so I mean, we're talking about a massive cut, you know, on an annual basis here that would be significant cuts to staffing or significant cuts to any sort of projects that we had in the pipeline that we wanted to potentially do. And these are year after year. This isn't a one-time, you know, cut. So all of that said, I'm not for these types of taxes, generally speaking. And I've come out and said that I'm, you know, opposed to the 1/10 to 1% sales tax. But I also have to look in the mirror and say, well, really, what are the options? And where do these options stack up? And the 1/10 to 1% sales tax, while it's not a good option, I don't like it. It's better than significant cuts to law enforcement and providing good amenities for our residents. It's also, you know, people have thrown out the idea of a B&O tax. That's really kind of one of our last remaining things that we have to try to sell for business owners and to retain business owners and to bring folks into Lakewood. So I'm not, you know, those are two items that I like even less, I guess, than this 1/10 to 1% sales tax. And so for that, I will be voting for the 1/10 to 1% sales tax. It's, in my opinion, the lesser of all of the evils. And it doesn't impact as much as the other ones potentially would, I think, for our community. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pearson. Are there any, Councilmember Ranstetter?
Yeah, and Mr. Vargas, in your preparation here, you talked about the need to fund 1,740 cases a year of indigent defense. What if we only funded 750 cases? Can we then, through prosecutorial policy and that, in terms of making policy, the court and the prosecutor making decisions as to which indigent defendants actually get a lawyer or which ones we're not going to prosecute if they insist on not doing some sort of diversion or something. That number is not mandated to us in the state mandate that generated this problem for us, that we have to continue to provide as many indigent defendants with cases as we have in the past. And we could adjust our policies to provide it for fewer and be more selective in which cases we did that. Is that 1740 number our choice?
So that 1740 number comes from a number of places. The first point here is that it's actually 1740 case equivalents, which is in line with other contracts that our main public defender has with other municipalities and is incorporated in Office of Public Defense standards as well. Essentially, we compensate based on one case equivalent equals one case filing, so a charging paper. But in addition to that, every hour a public defender spends in court, we compensate based on 0.22 of a case equivalent, essentially. So it's paying for first representation with a case filing, but it's also paying for time spent in court. Now, the other part of your question was, sort of how can we stymie the flow, perhaps, which clients get public defender or not. That decision rests within the judicial branch, right? Within the municipal court, the judge ultimately decides who receives a public defender. And in Washington State, it is in state law that you qualify for indigent defense representation. Essentially, if you qualify for any state help, if you will, right? In terms of like food stamps or Social Security income, that sort of thing. So because of that, a large majority of folks who apply for indigent defense will receive it. And as for, prosecution, that does rest within, the city administration here. But again, that has public safety impacts if you choose not to charge some of these in an effort to lower the amount of indigent defense representation. So there's a public safety impact there as well. So.
Okay, but my point really is that the 1740 is a calculation if we continue to provide public defense services as we have been.
Correct. Correct. It's historically based as well. Yep.
Are there any other Councilmember Lauricella?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we talked about this before, we all expressed concerns, and myself included. The 0.1%, as it's presented, buys us 2 years, and then we're underwater again, right? It gets us to 2028, but out through 2036, we have to fund, this says 14.5 full-time attorneys, which I don't know that we have a plan to get us there. And I don't know that enacting this 0.1% now is the right move, because I don't know about the rest of you, but I've never seen taxes come down in the future. So that's a concern of mine. At the same time, when we brought it up before, I asked that city staff provide a list of bad options, right? Things that we don't necessarily want to do, but find the lesser of the evils. And I'm not yet confident that we've explored all those options and done our due diligence. And I think the opportunity to look at that, as the city manager presented, maybe as we go through our retreat, establish our new priorities, we can then ask city staff to come back and go line by line through everything in the general fund and figure out what we do and don't want to prioritize in order to meet this, if we don't enact a 0.1% sales tax. At this point, I would not support putting that into action. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lauricella. Councilmember Branster, you ready for your amendment?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm in terms of looking at this, and I am in agreement with Councilmember Pearson that this is not a good idea. It's something that it's a choice from amongst a number of bad ideas. We are here because at the state level, they have made some policy direction that if we continue to operate as we have to go through this thing that gets us over the next 10 years further and further in the hole. And this solution doesn't fix that problem. It only gets us a year or a biennium to be able to go through and do that. When we were discussing this going back into last year, we were discussing and looking at and asking, well, what can we do to reduce the cost? And there were a couple of items that came up in that discussion, such as we could have a more robust system of diverting defendants to prosecution to something else. We looked at the time that we looked at our history going back 6-7 years, we were not really looking closely at defendants that claimed that they needed indigent defense as to whether they truly met all of the categories. And there were several categories we weren't using, which included the ones where a defendant is supposed to pay partially and then get indigent defense support to do that. And we haven't had any policy actions move forward to us that would help us work at addressing the problem. And then there's the question of what's the value of indigent defense? Okay. And we haven't gotten any data that says the indigent defense money that we're spending now creates real benefits in the terms of public safety for Lakewood. It complies with the kind of normal way that courts run and that's there. And I certainly agree that there are some offenders who commit gross misdemeanors and maybe even some serious misdemeanors, or who are repeat arrestees that we definitely, and are truly indigent, that maybe we need to move forward to do that. But I don't think we're at the point of where we really know that. And I don't know that the citizens of Lakewood really see the value of providing indigent defense for every misdemeanor arrestee. I think we also have occasions of where we decide to charge individuals with misdemeanors or gross misdemeanors in our court when the facts could be interpreted as being chargeable as a felony if we referred it to Pierce County, but they would make their own prosecutorial decisions then when that was referred. Lastly, we're in Lakewood. And there is a significant situation when you talk about sales taxes being regressive, and they are particularly regressive in communities that have high percentages of low-income people and low AMIs compared to many other communities. And we are in that situation. We are, one of the 2 lowest AMI communities in Pierce County, and certainly the largest that goes to that. And that to adopt easy to adopt, because the state has made it easy for us to adopt a regressive sales tax, and they do they do this completely? I personally believe that we don't want to do that. We can scale back on our indigent defense program to be able to go and do that. Okay. And that we don't need to do this tax. This tax was not created by the legislature as an aid to cities to deal with the indigent defense problem. It was actually created to help cities deal with true public safety issues, like cities that had trouble recruiting and dealing with real importance. So I'm in favor of looking at in not approving this tax, moving forward through the budgeting process to take a look at how much indigent defense can we actually afford to fund. Put that in our budgets and future budgets, and then allow our court and our prosecutorial staff to figure out how to allocate those resources amongst the potential need for indigent defense. And then I could be wrong. I could be wrong that citizens in Lakewood want every person arrested to be prosecuted, and if they're indigent, they want them to be prosecuted too. I don't think that, but and that's now how I feel. But maybe that is, and so, Mr. Mayor, I would move to amend the motion to state that the authorization of the sales and use tax for criminal justice purposes in RCW 80T.14 be submitted to the municipal voters at the next available general election. And then I would, because I would certainly abide by a decision that came about that way.
Okay, we have a amendment to the we have an amendment to on the floor to amend the ordinance as it's written. Do we have a second? Correct.
I will second that so we can discuss it.
Okay, so Councilmember Brandstetter's amendment has been moved and seconded. Councilmember Loris, or excuse me, Councilmember Lindholm, do you have a comment on this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just want to say that I completely agree with everything that Councilmember Lauricella said. I personally would like to see more discussion amongst council and with staff before we decide to put this to a vote. I want to make sure that we are as informed as we can be to make sure that we're doing the job we were set here to do. But either way, it's not clear to me we have to make a decision in the affirmative today. So if I had to vote today on the sales tax without the postponement or without putting to the voters, I would vote no.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Lindholm. We still have the amendment that is on the table. Are there any comments to the amendment that Councilmember Brandstetter has put forward? Councilmember Brandstetter.
My thought on this amendment is that we as a council or if we just vote to councilmanically approve that, we're taking the easy route out and we're not really looking at beyond that. Our real role is budgetary in this regard. And that I don't like regressive things, but I am willing to abide by if the voters really want to have indigent defense funded, I'm willing to do with them and then work through the budget process on what else then what goes away. But I would really like not real ready to substitute my judgment to say, well, we just need to have a sales tax that will go on in perpetuity until we stop it, okay, to address a problem that will to only address a problem for 2 years. And then have to go through it. And thus, I would say I'd refer to the voters. Now, when we put it to the voters, I would also tell them, if there's going to be something else, but I don't know what the something else is, but I think that there is some combination of provision and policies to do that. But I'm willing to abide by what the voters want to do if they think indigent defense is that important right now.
Any other comment? Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They're hard comments to follow, but to follow after. But nonetheless, I think that, ideologically, I recognize that it's not ideal for some to be in this position and have to raise taxes because just the sheer volume of the term is ideologically unfavorable. But I think that I think that just digging into the city's discretionary funding over a period of time to pay more and more for public safety, which residents do want. They do want safe everything. So including the aspects and the quality of life in Lakewood that enhance, augment, and even provide softer levels of public safety that is not hardcore public defense and enforcement. And so that is why, for me, I think it's all the more imperative to recognize that balance. And I'm thankful to Councilmember Pearson for being able to be self-reflective and say, yeah, look, it's not my flavor of tea, but looking, being in a position where I don't think we want to have to evaluate a budget every year to decide what to cut continuously every year to meet our intended public safety quota just on one line here. If we have concerns about the cost of our public defense contract, then it's incumbent upon us to put guardrails and service provisions or special provisions into the contract as best as we can to ensure that we are making the most of billable hours. So the other thing is that I think that if we dig into our discretionary funding levels over time, year after year, we are starting to put ourselves kind of on a service level death spiral, or a spiral that goes to a place where now, instead of a biennial budget where we're spending 2/3, now we're spending 80% of our budget on public safety and 20% on nothing else, because we are grasping for hairs and straws because we're hamstringing ourselves. So for me, I think councilmanic action is all the more important, because even if we and this is why I will say I am not in favor of Councilmember Brandsteyer's amendment, because respectfully, even if we put something to the voters and that ballot fails, then we are right back where we are today, and we will have spent that much more time delaying ourselves to have this discussion again. So respectfully, for that reason, I'm not for the amendment, and we can discuss, we can look at budget, I won't say budget cuts, but budget adjustments. But at the same time, recognizing that we have quite a bit of brand new executive staff, and I would like to hear from them what they have observed and noted in the city's policies and procedures and way of doing things. And if they have already noted any, perhaps they already have some ideas of areas where we can cut the cost of administrative spending. So I think we have to give ourselves the chance to understand that too. So for me, it's important for me. I would be in favor of supporting this ordinance tonight, because I don't think it's taking the easy way out. I think that it's being responsible and striking the balance between what our residents expect a basic minimum level of service for us to provide that meet their daily needs in addition to public safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Talbot. Are there any other comments? Okay, Councilmember Lauricella, and this is to the amendment.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So I appreciate Councilmember Brandstetter's proposed amendment. And I agree with what Councilmember Lindholm said, though I may not say it as eloquently. I think we need, or I personally need more information from staff before I'm comfortable making a decision on this, including a decision on whether to put this to the voters. So for me personally, I would not vote yay on the amendment because I think it's upon us to get more information together before we make that decision. And as I said before, on the main motion, I would want more information before voting yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so to the amendment, I'm going to vote no on the amendment. I think it's a little bit cynical to we fund all sorts of stuff out of the general fund, but all of a sudden it's indigent defense, something that they have a constitutional right to. It's not we're not making decisions here about whether or not they need the indigent defense. They have a constitutional right to it, right? They're going to win in any court of the land if they're not don't have adequate counsel. And then to go to the voters and say, well, do you think people other than you should be able to have free lawyers? It's not up to us to decide that, right? It's the court, and then it's prosecutorial discretion. We would be frozen. We essentially, this amendment freezes us as a city and as a city council until November, until the results of the November vote are in. We have a budget that we need to have passed by the end of November, probably, right? So what do we tell, if we pass this amendment, what do we tell? They have to write two budgets, one all cuts, one with? I mean, I'm not, and then we essentially just stop talking about any programs and whatnot till we can somehow wait until the vote. It just won't work. So I'm a no on the amendment. So we are going to vote on the amendment first. Councilmember Lindholm, are you there yet?
I'm here.
Okay. So on the amendment, so can you read the amendment in, please? Do we have the wording of the amendment?
Authorization of sales and use tax for criminal justice purposes of RCW 82.14 be submitted to the municipal voters at the next available general election.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Nay. The amendment has failed. So now we're back to the underlying ordinance. Are there any other questions, comments about the underlying ordinance? Councilmember Lauricella.
Thank you, Mayor Boki. Just one last comment based on the projections. I think going forward with this puts us on a slippery slope where potentially we're voting for another 0.1% every 2 years until we get to 2036.
Councilmember Brandstetter.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to vote against the ordinance. One, I don't believe that adding 0.1% of sales tax and letting the state off the hook for solving a problem that they have caused for numerous cities and counties across the state. Admittedly, they didn't do anything this past legislative session. Some state legislators attempted to do that, like they attempted to put money in the millionaire tax and do some other things, but the majority of them chose not to do that. And they're sort of looking for counties and cities to just sort of take them off the hook for something that is a state level bigger unfunded mandate than most of the bigger unfunded mandates that they have. So I would vote to not impose the tax at this time. I would agree with Councilmember Lindholm that I think that there is some ways to reduce the impact of it, but I think we should also double our efforts to impress upon the state that they need to do something to mitigate this, not just go through, because this tax, the ordinance that created it was not intended to address this problem. And it doesn't, for us, solve this problem, but it causes in our community, it puts a long-term regressive increment on the most regressive tax that many of us have. And so I'm going to vote no on the ordinance.
Any other additions, comments? Okay, Councilmember Lindholm,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
you have any comments?
For once, I do not have any comments.
Okay, thank you. A couple of items. I mean, it is a regressive tax. The way Washington system works, and the legislature now does this. They did this with the behavioral health tax. They've done this with the housing and related services sales tax, but I will go to the behavioral health sales tax first. No one plausibly argued that mental health was not a function of state government. There was no argument around that. It says it in the state there's like two things mentioned in the state constitution. Mental health's one of them. They did the same thing with the behavioral health sales tax, and they went to the counties, and anytime anybody said, hey, we need more mental health spending, they said, have you passed that tax? The tax is not a solution. This is what the legislature gives us. We're a creature of the legislature. They've now done this. This wasn't a legislative, this lawyer thing, indigent defense thing wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't a legislative thing, right? It wasn't their idea. It was the Bar Association, cynically, it was the Bar Association that decided they came up with this, hey, you need to hire more lawyers. Oh, okay. And then they go to the state Supreme Court who said, we've got to implement this over 10 years. What I want to point out is we already have budget issues. I mean, I took some time and I looked at the budget book that we used for the deliberations of the budget that we're currently in, the 25-26. And on one of the pages somewhere there, and I didn't bring it tonight, but Ms. Kraus is here, it showed that we have the goal of a 12% fund balance. We have a unrestricted fund balance at the end of the year, 12% of next year's revenues or expenses. And we've been above that, but it's been going down. And in the next biennium, it was due to go down. And then in the biennium after that, so the third and fourth year of this thing, it was going to go way below to like 4.5%, and then it was going to go negative. Now, I don't know if those have been updated yet or not. But the issue with that is this was before this. This was before these additional costs on this. And I don't know if we were including the cost of the cameras. We're in a difficult spot. And if I believed that we could cut our way out of it, I would support that. I really would. If I thought, you know what, we'll just crank down on all the departments, we'll just crank, and that would include the police, by the way. We'll just crank on them. And somehow but remember, people are still paying taxes on all this other stuff. And when the levels of service go down, they're going to be like, what am I paying for? So there's this what I'm saying is I think we're going to be doing some reductions anyway in the fall because we're not going to have enough money. We don't know what some of the collective bargaining agreements are going to say, so that's another variable out there. So, you know, we've got a lot of variables. We're up to like 2 or 3 variables all the time in this situation. And if we take this off the table, we've made the numbers a lot worse. That's all I know. So is it a great thing to be sitting here and voting for a general sales tax increase? No. We haven't had a new general tax, I think, in this city. We did raise the utility tax on gas, I think the last go around. But within the general fund, we have not had a tax increase since. I mean, we have the 1% every year, but we have not added an additional tax since I've been here. We did the TBD, but that goes into a different area. So I really do, I really do support this. I really do hope that the legislature will realize their obligation. I think the Washington Association of Counties is pursuing it through the courts, but those things take years. And I think the real wake-up call for me was when we were down there, we had the money in the millionaire's tax. It was set aside they had a set aside for local government that we could use for this. And then it disappeared at the end, which is how it works. That's part of the deal. But clearly it wasn't a legislative priority to help the counties and cities out yet. And the counties have the big responsibility, of course, because they've got the felonies. I would also point out, we ended up with more cases because all the drug cases moved down from felony to gross misdemeanors and misdemeanors. So we took on that responsibility, which added to the workload. What we've got is up until they changed the law, we didn't have that either. So for those, just the long-term fiscal health, or at least the short-term fiscal health over the next few years, I think we need to approve this. It's a difficult vote. I really do recognize that, and I recognize that it is a regressive tax. Now, the legislature has done some things in that regard that I think were good, but are going to hurt us, right? So I'll throw that in, that at the end of the session, they took some in 2029 or whatever, when the millionaire's tax kicks in, they're taking the tax off like diapers and some personal care items. They should do that. It's the right thing to do, to try to make the tax less regressive, the sales tax, but it also hurts our numbers. So our numbers are going to go down. So people who buy diapers and personal care items at Walmart and Target, they're not going to be paying sales tax anymore. I mean, good for them, but for our finances, it's difficult. So with that, I'll be voting yes on it. So I'm going to do a voice vote on this, and hopefully Councilmember Lindholm will be able to hear him. Or do you want me to do a?
Mayor, it's your choice. Would you like a roll call?
Yeah, let's do a roll call just to make sure we got everybody. Thanks.
Councilmember Talbot,
Yay.
Deputy Mayor Bell,
Yay.
Councilmember Brandstetter,
Nay.
Councilmember Lauricella,
Nay.
Councilmember Lindholm,
Nay.
Councilmember Pearson,
Yay.
and Mayor Bokie.
Aye.
Ordinance passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for. I recognize it's a very difficult subject. Any unfinished business, Mr. City Manager?
No,
Any new business?
no, we don't.
So reports by the city manager.
As we are looking at next week's study session, pretty full agenda, several things of note. We'll have an overview of the legacy plan. We will have an update on the 2026 state legislative session, although we heard a lot of that already tonight. We'll also be reviewing surveys and encroachments in the street ends as we look at that volunteer program. And we'll also be reviewing an amendment to our agreement with EXP Services as it relates to urban forestry program and the NECC. When we first adopted that in November of 2015, it was a reduced program with some of the things not included, anticipated into the future because we didn't know about the grant at the time. With the arrival of the grant, we're looking to incorporate some of those. So we'll be able to give a broader description of what those amendments are, what they're going to do for the program for that discussion. Outside of that, just following up on a couple of requests for proclamations that we're looking at from individual council members. Had one on Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, which we'll include in May, and had a request from a council member in human trafficking. Normally we look at having 2 people agree, so I throw those out in case there's any objection to those. If not, we'll move forward with scheduling those. Upcoming items, we have the Lake City Neighborhood Association on the 9th, Telecom Woodbrook Neighborhood Association on the 14th, Port Silicome Neighborhood Association on the 21st, Downtown Neighborhood Association on the 22nd, and Parks Appreciation Day on the 25th, and the retreat on April 18th. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Do we have folks to cover all those? I will tell you, I've been invited to the Tillicum Woodbrook one to speak as mayor. I mean, I got an invitation and I have accepted that. So whoever was going on the 14th, you can still come and make council member comments, I guess, but are we covered for all the other places? Does anybody need to sub for anybody? Okay. All right. Well, just let us know if anybody needs to sub for anybody. Any questions for the city manager? Do you have any were we supposed to talk about sister cities? Gimhae trip?
Yeah, we do have that invitation that we did receive from Gimhae at the end of the month. Let me actually pull that up. Thank you. So April 30th to May 3rd for the Gaia Cultural Festival in Gimhae. So yeah, I guess we should decide if we want to look at sending a delegation to that.
Yeah.
The dates of the festival are, I think, April 30th through May 3rd.
Yeah, that's the one we went to, right? Isn't that the?
It's really short notice.
Yeah, Mike, can you make it, you think? Or can anybody make the trip? Is there anybody right now who like knows they can make that?
Mr. Mayor, I can make the trip.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Lindholm. And are you planning to go then, Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, I certainly can.
Okay. I don't know that I can make it. Because we've got the DC trip. And then
So I didn't catch, I know we had Councilmember Lindholm. Were there other individuals?
okay.
Will the sister cities be expected to, are the travel costs covered by the city?
Yeah, we get
I think
reimbursed.
there was some discussion at the sister cities meeting this week, and I think it was our understanding that the mayor and or deputy mayor would be the first to be invited. So I think that's, but we were just waiting on word for that.
Well, I'll talk to my spouse, but okay.
If you can let us know by the end of the week.
Yeah, we're gonna have to make some decisions. Okay. Councilmember Ranstetter, do you?
Question.
Okay. Councilmember Ranstetter has a question.
Mr. Russell, has there been any progress or news regarding the discussions that with the Western State Hospital and ourselves in the aftermath of the incident of an escapee.
No, we're meeting internally tomorrow,
The meeting's tomorrow?
internally.
Okay.
And then to see kind of what other items, what protocols Western States even does with that.
Okay, thank you.
Manager. Okay, council member comments. So let's start with council member Laura Sella. And then we'll go to council member Lindholm so we can go to bed. It's getting very late.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I attended the Public Safety Advisory Council meeting last week, where we had a good discussion on their prioritization for where to put potential speed cameras around the city. So I think we'll hear about that either next week or the week after in our meeting. There was a question brought up by one of the members of that committee about whether the city would be willing to provide some sort of communication about safe use of motorized bikes and scooters in the city, and maybe just general, maybe it's from the police department, maybe it's just from the city account, but just, how people can be safe on those things and how to guide their kids to do things safely. So if there's any sort of regulations.
Yeah, did they have any more discussion, like, was it locations?
I think it was just in general. So I've seen from my day job that there are a disproportionate amount of accidents and injuries from e-bikes and scooters and that kind of thing.
Okay, if I just touch base with you later.
Yeah, absolutely. Other than that, looking forward to our retreat on the 18th and Parks Appreciation Day on the 25th. And I also appreciate the in-depth conversations we had tonight as a council. I think it really put things in perspective. So thank you.
Councilmember Lindholm.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too really appreciate the conversations that happened tonight. These are hard questions, and I think people had good reasons for answering them the way that they did. I want to double down on the importance that I see of a proclamation on human trafficking. Some proclamations have more impact than others. And one of the things we know about human trafficking is that it's very expensive to surveil and really root some of these things out. It's also obviously very important. So one of the big things that we can do as a city is raise awareness, and the proclamation can help do that. So I still am very much in favor of that, and hope my fellow council members are as well. And I just want to say thank you to Mayor Boki for coming to Lakewood Rotary last week. He is doing his best to be out in all the right places, and I commend him for that. And the other council members as well. There's a lot of places to be, and I appreciate being part of a team that prioritizes that. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindholm. Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, Planning Commission met last week and they heard, I think they heard as an information item primarily the framework that we asked them to look over as far as formulating the task force for the NEC committee. And so Ms. Spear walked through that with them, and there was not much discussion other than there was some desire expressed that council participate in those task force meetings. So I decided I would bring that back. I will do my best, at least in my role liaisoning with the Planning Commission, to attend those task force meetings. But I think there is some desire to have some council member participation at some of those task forces when they kick them off. I do want to thank, as far as public comment tonight, I do want to thank Roger Neal and the AARP for their driver safety classes. Those classes, I have heard that they do bring, that they do get a lot of signups, and that they bring people they bring seniors to the to the senior center that have never heard of or seen the senior center and have a positive experience when they're here. So, and our senior center, even though it's housed in that wing, as I am aware, actually attracts quite a lot of activity and participants. So I'm just thankful that we have those classes, that he's doing that work. Thank you to AARP for continue to hold those classes here. I'm also excited for Wards Lake Park opening at the latter end of this month, which I have been to. We did hear some public comments tonight about Portland Loos, and if you don't know or want to see one up close, we have one at Wards Lake Park. And when I went there, I was unable to use it because, or even see inside of it, because it was occupied by family after family that was using it. So thank you to our park staff for their design choices. That's it for my report.
Thank you, Councilmember Talbot. Councilmember Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to your question about the Telecom American Lake Gardens Neighborhood Association on the 14th, I am planning to go to that. If I'd see you there, if not that, and that I'm have two meetings with South Sound 911 scheduled later this month. One is that the last update of their charter and bylaws was 6 years ago, and so there's a committee that's reviewing those. I don't really know what that goes, but those committee meetings start here later this week. But beyond that, the South Sound 911 is for many years been putting money aside for radio systems. And there was a time when I thought that trying to put this money here to see if there is some solution to the fact that some organizations, fire or police, are serviced by a radio system run by Tacoma, and others are serviced by one that is run by Pierce County, and that the cost to agencies, depending on which one you are, is different. Of being able to go, and they thought, well, let's do something to just make one, and they started putting money aside. Actually, they put aside $9 million. Okay. And they've been continuing those discussions, and the discussions have gotten to the point of where it's not our problem. And so they have $9 million, okay? And right now, the plan on the table that will either get approved on April 15th or a month from then is to take that $9 million and divide it up and return it to police and fire agencies across the county. And were that to happen, Lakewood would get a one-time reduction in this year's allocation of $626,000 for of how that goes. Or so it would either be canceling the remaining payments, or it would be an actual refund of some things to do that. And I'm expecting for that to come up on the agenda on April 15th. And depending on how that discussion goes, it'll either get voted on or it'll be voted on in May. But the majority of board members of South Sound 911 seem to be in favor of refunding the money because they haven't got anything to do with it. Given the parameters around which it was set aside in a separate fund. So that could, I'm expecting that to be some good news to do that. Recognize that that money does not include Councilmember Lauricella's paycheck, so he'd still get paid no matter what they do. To be able to go on and do that. All right, but anyway, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you for that good news. That's great news. Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the Community Healthcare Lunch and Laughter a couple weeks ago, and that was the first time going to that event. It was nice to see such support for them. We have one of their facilities in Lakewood, and so went there and chatted with the CEO, who is retiring later this year. So there's going to be some new leadership at Community Healthcare, and we'll see what goes on there. Their last CEO, I believe, was in the position for like 20 years or something. So they've had long tenure at their leadership, and yeah, it was a well-attended event. I attended Parks and Rec Advisory Board last week. I believe it was last week, and there was some fairly robust discussion about the H-Barn project and what the vision is and what the desire is for different folks and on PRAB and what past commitments have been. Mr. Brandstetter and Ms. Talbot and myself attended an ad hoc committee today for the H-Barn, and again was kind of met with very similar thoughts and a lot of support around the H-Barn project, and I think that we're cautiously optimistic of what that project could be. Really, what was thrown out there was the $14.3 million project. Even if funding goes well, we're still sitting at 1.8, almost $2 million worth of funds that the city would have to come up with. And if if we don't get grants and some other things, then what does that number look like? And really at that point, is it really a project given some of these other discussions that we're having tonight with where things are at and those things. So I'm hoping that us three can get together maybe before next week's meeting, if you guys are open to meeting at 6 or so here, and we can discuss what we had talked about at the ad hoc committee meeting and kind of have a consensus from us three to at least discuss amongst the rest of the group at next week's meeting.
So thank you for asking. Normally I would and I could, except next Monday I have obligations to be in my staff role up at Renton. So I will actually be joining executive session late, around 7:30, if that's acceptable. So I wouldn't be able to meet Monday, but I could meet anytime before then.
Okay, well, I'll touch base with Mr. Brandstetter and Ms. Talbot and see if we can. It'd be nice to touch base soon so we can get some direction on. People are really clamoring on where to go with the 60%, and so we had some good discussions. So we just need to provide direction. So, yes, and then I would like to add an item to our study session. There's a resolution that usually our resolutions are pretty, standard, I guess. We kind of do a lot of the same resolutions every year. This one was a bit different, as it looks like it's the resolution that I'm talking about is the resolution expressing commitment to the unified regional approach. And so in the bottom of the resolution, it almost looks like we're kind of committing. This isn't really an ILA, but we're making some commitments to what we're going to be doing as part of this process. And I just want to make sure that we've all had time to discuss that and make sure that everyone's, on board or not on board before we put forth a resolution with, half signatures or no, whatever. So just want to have some time to discuss that a little bit. And that's all. Mr. Branstetter had a question or comment.
Thank you, and I'm going to let Mike talk to that. Do we have time in that study session? I mean, we've added,
You know what I'd say? I don't know how, sometimes those agenda items go 5 minutes, sometimes they go a lot longer.
yeah,
We can put it on and always bump it to the next one.
Okay.
I mean, it wouldn't be bad because I'm meeting this Friday with the city managers and, and basically express, there's differing opinions, on the understanding of that resolution and the challenges with that. So that'd be some good information for me to share as well, and then can follow up with, if we're able to get to it at our next study session, to share that.
okay, let's put that on there and Mike will speak to it.
Let me just say that the URA process, which has been being driven by a consultant, and it was a consultant that drafted that resolution because they were really trying to get a sense of which cities were where or were serious being able to go and do that. Since that resolution was distributed, there have been a couple of developments. One is the city manager said that there's going to be a meeting by county staff who are going to meet with all of the city managers to sort of talk about where they see the URA process moving forward. And it and that's going to take place on the 10th, okay, again, to be able to go and do that. Beyond that, the county has made the decision to cancel the remaining months of the contractor's contract. So it's going to take another direction, and thus the urgency for that particular resolution, if it even becomes something that they still want to do, is not immediate. And that it is the intent of the county staff that are taking over the project to include, which is under the direction of Councilmember Hitchin, okay, to schedule a opportunity for the county to come to brief the council at a study session or something to do that. Although she's wanting to start those rounds of things in May. So I think that they will be asking to come to have the kind of discussion that we need to do that. And there certainly is no expectation of any immediate action on the draft resolution that was originally distributed.
Thank you. Yeah, I am aware that the contract has now been stopped with the group that was there. So we don't need to talk. Is that okay? I mean, we can put it off a month or so. Yeah, it sounds like, or at least until Councilmember Hitchin gets here to speak to it. Yeah, I think we should give her that. I think we should give her that, word escapes me, but we should, opportunity. Okay, so Councilmember Bell, Deputy Mayor Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. I had the great opportunity to be here for the Youth Council this afternoon, where they presented Elijah, I believe, I cannot remember his last name, but with a scholarship from the First Lions Club that Councilmember Branstetter also belongs to. So Elijah was very, very grateful, and he was surprised and happy, and it was really great. And he was able to be presented the scholarship in front of his peers too. So thank you to the First Lions Club, right? That's what the title is. First, I forgot that part. So thank you. That was wonderful. And then I just want to say, I'm very proud to serve with my fellow council members. I thought that we had great discussion today. It was everyone just treated each other opinions with grace and thoughtfulness, and I really appreciate that from each and every one of you. And again, very difficult decisions, very difficult things that we have to address and put forward, but in the betterment of our community and the safety of our community, I think that we did the best decision that we could possibly do tonight. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Bell. I think we've covered just about everything that we could possibly cover at almost 10 o'clock at night, so I'm going to be very brief. I did have a nice visit with the Rotary Club on Friday. Thank you to the city manager for putting together a nice presentation, and I just spoke to it because the pictures were up there. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, so then I only had to say 100 towards each picture or something like that. But it was enjoyable, and it's a club full, like a lot of the service clubs, full of people who have either been elected officials, are currently, one or two of them are currently elected officials, have been on our boards and commissions, and do a lot of volunteering to really. So I'm going to leave you with a story because we've been through a lot tonight. And I like to tell stories. So, and I've, spent a lifetime working at it because I don't think I tell good stories, but I'm going to tell you about why we do this, right? So I'm driving and I want to see the Lhasa project and how they're doing on the Lhasa project. So I make a turn, and so I'm on the road behind the Lhasa project. So now I'm between the new Lhasa project and Kiwanis Park. And there are quite a few people in Kiwanis Park, right? It's a beautiful day. This was a week or two ago. Beautiful day, and varying types of people, right? There was somebody wrapped up in a blanket on one of the picnic tables, right? But there was a family and there was other people. There was this couple out walking. They're out walking just like my wife and I do. But here's the difference. They were picking up garbage. They had a bag and they had those little things and they were picking up garbage and they were just walking into the park and they already had a bag full of stuff. And I was like, I almost stopped. If I had one of those coins, I would have stopped, jumped out and given it to them. I was like, these are the people we want in our city. These are the kind of folks that we want. And this is why we do this job. It's like, I was just like, these people are great. It's a beautiful Saturday and they're out picking up garbage. And I just thought it was the greatest thing. And I was just moved by that they did that. So on that positive note, along with council members Branstedter's great note that we might get over $600,000 back in the mail,